So everybody listen to Ksun Radio, Sonoma State University's only online radio station. This is DJ Rob, the Mellow Guy, and I am honored to have calling in today a guitar player from the 80s that, again, he really pushed the bar there, played in a band called Dokken. He also had the band Lynch Mob and numerous other projects that if I was to try to name them all, I don't think I'd be able to say hello, so I'm just going to stop there. George Lynch, how you doing?
That was the longest introduction I've ever had. Thank you. That was nice.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, I look at all your projects and the history as a guitar player, I'm thinking, I can't say all these projects. I mean, you've been in a lot of different groups. And as a musician, is that something that you kind of recommend for young musicians doing, to not just focus primarily on one thing, to kind of diversify and do a little of everything?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think ideally, optimally, what would be nice would be for, a younger musician, myself, anybody that's in the music business, is to have kind of a home base, something that bands can get into, depend on year after year, develop a sound and a style and an image, and just stick with that. That would be great. I would love to do that myself, but I've diversified out of necessity and because I'm interested in trying other things. But
yeah, I wanted to bring that up because it's definitely a time-based thing, because in the 80s, the focus seemed to be that bands, again, they had the home base. They got into the cycle of touring, putting out albums, again, making videos for MTV, and then that kind of broke up, and as you said, you kind of had to adjust to the new music industry. And you've definitely, again, within this past year, you've put out a lot of releases for, most musicians. I believe you have the new Lynch Mob that came out last year, and then you have this project that you did with Michael Sweet. So you're pretty busy.
KXM as well came out last year.
Oh, so yeah, you have 3 projects out.
Yeah, and I've got quite a few more in the pipeline. Well, it's 2 things. It's the fact that back in the day we put out a record and we'd sell 1 million records, we sell 2 million records, sell 700,000 records, whatever it was. I mean, that's a huge numbers, and you can sustain yourself with that. Everybody can, make a living and then relax and spend time working on that one project and touring on it in support of it, and spending time in pre-production, developing the songs, writing the songs, and then getting in and spending your time with the record, making sure you're recording it properly and it'll be highly anticipated, because you do a record every year and a half or so. And that's a nice pace to have in your life, But that's a luxury for most of us, I mean, there's very few bands that get to do that these days, because, people aren't selling records, so, where I used to sell 1 million records on a release, now I'll sell 20,000 or 30,000 records. So that's a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, and again, it's records. Nobody, not many people are buying records these days. So.
Whatever you call it, yeah. I mean, the product, the collection of 12 songs, however you deliver it. People are just taking it, and not paying for it. So, for whatever reason, however that's able to work, that's able to happen. I mean, KXM, we just got a report from the streaming service. We offered it, had to offer it on Amazon Plus because we were selling hard CDs on Amazon Plus, a record company was. And we had over 2.5 million streams. We got paid virtually nothing for that. I mean, it was just a tiny amount of money. That's 2.5 million, streams that could have been purchases that people could have actually paid for. A reasonable amount of money. We'll be able to go, okay, well, KXM could now be a band, which is what we'd like to do. I mean, I would like to have Ray Lazier and Doug Pinnick and myself be in a band where we would sell enough records where we could afford to only be in that band,
I think
or maybe we just have 2 bands instead of 6 bands, what I'm saying?
Exactly. Again, to me,
go out and tour and do another record and, develop and evolve.
Again, that was it was a good release. I have to say that. I feel kind of bad. I forgot to mention it when I was listing out all the groups you've been in, but KXM, I really did like the couple songs that I heard from that, Rescue Me, and then Gunfight, which you did videos for, too. And I think that's another important aspect, that bands are still, rock bands are still doing videos, although nowadays you're not going to get the MTV support because MTV doesn't even play music videos anymore. Yeah,
of course. Just primarily YouTube, I think, is where they're seen, and it's just a promotional vehicle. So something that videos are something that costs us money to do. They don't make us money, but we do it as part of the promoting the awareness of the record. In KXM's case, we didn't do any touring on the record, so we felt we needed to do a number of videos to at least help increase awareness. So we did 3. We did one for Rescue Me, the first single. The second single was Gunfight, and then the third video was a song called Faith is a Room. And then we also did a multitude of behind the scenes making of the record and the videos as well.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool. So that helped, I think. You have to do that now.
Now I wanted to go to your other project, the one that recently came out, and one that I reviewed. I did a written album review for my blog. I really enjoyed this release from you and Michael Sweet, the Sweet and Lynch album, Only to Rise. I want to kind of ask you a little bit how that collaboration came. Did you and Michael Sweet back in the day in the 80s have some connection? Did you guys cross paths anytime? And I want to get your thoughts on what you thought about the release and how, in your career, that album kind of stacks up and, where you came from as a guitar player on that album.
Well, I got to say, honestly, that Michael and I have a somewhat recent relationship, having done some touring together with our respective bands, Lynch Mob and Striper. And that's how we became, not friends, but acquaintances, and hung out and talked about the possibility of possibly doing something down the road. We weren't sure what that would be. But where the project really had its germination was with Frontiers Records, who hired Michael to produce, put together a band, which became Sweet and Lynch, and Michael approached me. The record company and Michael approached me to partner up with Michael. And so it was kind of a business proposal. It was not like, two guys going, wow, let's put our dream band together and start out in the garage and see where it goes. It wasn't like that. It was more of a, it looked good on paper, and they made me an offer, and I came aboard. And I got to say that the results justify the means, because even though we never actually worked together, even in the process of making the record, we were never in the same room together.
Wow.
It came out surprisingly well. I was really, really happy with it.
Yeah, because there's some powerful songs on there. I think September is the song that just it stood out in my mind. Who came up with that? Was that Michael or you?
Well, I came up with the music, and Michael came up with the words and the lyrics and the melodies. There's a little bit of crossing here and there, but for the most part, I just went to work in LA here and in a studio with my engineer and a programmer, and just busted out songs and sent them over to Michael and Brian and James, who rearranged them and tracked them and did whatever they had to do, and then sent it back to me, and then I finished up the guitars on the rearranged song, and then sent it back to them, and they finished it up, and it just worked really well. It was very a relatively easy record for me. It was fun, and it was easy. I just went, wow, I can write anything I want. I don't really have anybody else in the room to tell me, to confuse anything. I just, writing things off the top of my head after Michael and I talked about the direction of the record. It just all flowed, and it was really pretty uneventful and easy. Seamless.
That's really cool, and again, it's a really good record, so I highly recommend people check it out. That's Sweet and Lynch, Only to Rise. And now I wanted to bring it, because you brought up in the studio, back in the day in Dokken, did you guys spend a lot of time together in the studio, or did you kind of have the same thing where you would go in and do your parts, people would maybe come up with ideas, and you'd trade off?
No, Dokken was really primarily the bulk of the work was myself and Jeff, and with Mick to a lesser extent. But Jeff and I were kind of the core. Like, we'd go in and woodshed and lock ourselves down for however amount of, a good amount of time, and do all the writing, most of the writing. Jeff and Don did get together, and we would bring Don in occasionally, but I'd say, 80% of the time that's what it was. And then and Don would come in at the 11th hour, and after we'd already done the pre-production, came up with a lot of the melodies and the words and sang them, on the demos, and then Don would ghost them. And then there were some songs that obviously Don would be more involved in, but I'd say 80% of it was done that way. Gotcha.
And I also wanted to bring up about your Dokken years, because when I was in high school here, I saw on Headbangers Ball, the Metal Mania on VH1 Classic. It was like one time I was watching it. Dream Warriors. I think it was the first time I saw Dream Warriors. I'm a fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, the movie series, and I saw that video and the song, and I just want to know, what was it like to do that? And it was interesting because a lot of the times in 80s horror films, heavy metal music was there. Bands did songs for the soundtracks, because after Dokken recorded, I think Vinnie Vincent Invasion, they did a song for the Fallout movie. So I kind of wanted to get your take on the experience of working, with the people from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Well, it was a little bit intimidating, because we've never really been involved on a movie set or involved with big movie stars or anything like that before. So, but we wrote the song. The songwriting was sort of like that got competitive within the band, because we all wanted, our version of the song on the movie. So it got a little contentious there, but it was a healthy competition. And then so that we got the song figured out, and then we went in and did the video with Freddie, and I think it was one of the Arquette sisters. Not sure which one.
Patricia.
But yeah, this awesome set, and we're hanging out in the trailer with Freddie, and he's all in his makeup and his scissor hands, on, and totally in costume and everything, and hanging out with him and partying with him a little bit. And I remember there was a scene where I had to go through a wall, get pulled through a wall during my guitar solo. And they make these breakaway walls that are, like a 4-year-old could bust through.
Yeah, the special effect walls, yeah.
But I couldn't bust through it, so I kept ruining the scene, so I had to keep setting up and taking a shot over it. Which is why in the shot that you do see that's in the video, I was sort of laughing, because I was so weak I couldn't get to the dumb wall.
I just thought you were having a good time.
Through, and I didn't think that I did it very well, so they were going to use it, so I laughed, which kind of ruined the scene, but they couldn't afford to keep shooting it, so because I kept screwing up, so they just left that one.
I think it's a great video. I think it's hilarious. I love that. I think, again, it sounded like you had a good time with that.
Yeah. No,
definitely. Now, I wanted to bring up Lynch Mob after Dokken, and recently here you've had the album last year, Sun Red Sun, and I kind of want to ask, is it because, I guess you could say, that you are the primary guy in Lynch Mob, it's your project, that's why Lynch Mob has lasted so long since the late 80s, because a lot of bands, have not lasted, since the late 80s or the 80s, where you have kept Lynch Mob fairly consistent over the years. You're still putting out new releases, so I wanted to know what you would attribute to that.
Well, I've had some mis-releases, I've put out a record called Smoke This, which was very poorly received, and it shouldn't have been called Lynch Mob.
Yeah, every band does that, though, so,
Record company to call it that, just so that, just for recognition. Did we call it something else? Because it really wasn't Lynch Mob in any play at all. It was more of a little bit of a rap metal record, and it should have been called Lynch Biscuit. We're going to joke with that.
That actually probably would have worked.
And I've had other releases that are questionable using under the name Lynch Mob, but the core Lynch Mob chemistry is Oni and myself, and that's what we've got back to. We did have the Sun Red Sun release a couple of months ago. We are now just finishing up vocals on a release for this year. It's going to come out, I imagine, sometime in the summer on Frontier Records. It's full record, full 12, 13 song album, and it's just the chemistry between Oli and I, and what happens when we sit down and write. And I do my thing, and he does his thing, and it just the magic happens. It's awesome.
So even after rap metal albums and all, you still find a way to continue and soldier on. Now, the last question, I wanted to ask you to wrap this up here. As a guitar player, I wanted to quickly have you kind of give your opinion on the current scene in rock and metal guitar playing. Do you see anybody that you like, anybody that's doing something unique, creative, or do you feel that the guitar heroes, they're back in the day? You're not really seeing much new inspiration coming forward, so kind of want to get your take on that.
You know, I don't know how a real guitar hero, you know, like a universal, all-encompassing guy of that magnitude can really emerge at this point. I can't imagine what somebody could do. Because back in the late 60s and early 70s, you know, rock and roll was just in its formative stages. You know, nobody'd written the rule book yet, you know, people were just finding their way in the dark. And so there's all this open virgin territory to try new things. And so you can get guys like Hendrix and Beck and Page and Clapton to emerge and, you know, and blaze new ground. But everything's been blazed. I mean, it's like every, you know, untrampled wild area has been discovered and paved over. So I don't really know what somebody could do other than just, you know, be a little retro and go back and combine styles and be a synthesis of this guy and that guy, or, you know, a little slant on this style. You know, I don't really know, but I mean, technique has been taken to its limit over and over again. You know, Meshuggah and Animals leaders and bands like Periphery and, you know, these guys that are just insane monsters. You know, technicians. I mean, so, you know, that hyper speed, 64, you know, notes per second. You know, I mean, I'm like, how the hell do you beat that? You can't.
That's very
and then,
true.
You know, there's wonderful organic players and, you know, Derek Trucks and guys like that are just playing beautiful, pure slide and old rock and roll and stuff. You know, I don't know who that guy would be. I can't even imagine it happening. You know, what I'm leery of too is guys that might come out and try to consciously be a guitar hero. You know what I mean? I don't think that's something you can consciously try to do. You know, it just has to be an organic thing that happens. You know?
It just happens.
Premeditation.
Yeah, again, back in the day, Randy Rhoads, no one knew.
Yeah, right. It just sort of, you know, just all the things in the universe lined up. You know. But, you know, I think there are guys, I won't name names, but that have, you know, been around and just sort of like, well, I need to prove that I can do everything and be, you know, just be the guy that does it all, you know, and I just think that's kind of silly too. Because,
yeah. Well,
but, you know, I mean, I love Derek Trucks. I mean, I don't know if you'd call him a guitar hero, but, you know.
I guess a guitar player that you respect or you really like, I guess I would say too.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I love Tosin from Animals Leaders, Thorndal from Meshuggah. I mean, you know, these metal progressive guys. There's, you know, Jeff Loomis, guys like that are just, you know, monster technicians and have way too many strings on their guitars and stuff. You know, and I love Doyle Bramall and really organic, you know, Texas players. You know, Bonamasso's insane. I'd say Bonamasso's, you know, he's sort of a guitar hero, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he left Black Country Comedian there, so, you know, I don't know what he's doing too much nowadays. Solo projects, but he's good.
And he's really done a great job of kind of making the new paradigm of the business work for him. You know, he's been very, very successful.
That's very true.
Making money and being, you know, owning what he does and not giving it away. And yeah, he's a smart guy. So.
All right.
He's a good example. I mean, somebody that maybe younger guys should look to is how to operate, you know, going forward.
Definitely. Well, George, thank you for calling in, giving us all this great feedback, and I also like to say best of luck on all the projects you do, and to all our listeners, check out these projects, KXM. I also forgot, I think TNN, you and Jeff.
TNN was a couple of years ago.
So that was a project I still people might want to check out.
Yeah, you can go to georgelynch.com and it like lists everything up there.
George Lynch. That's very helpful too. Yeah, so I don't have to actually say it all again.
Yeah, man, it's all on the list.
So thanks, George, for calling in. Have a good one.
Yeah, it was really nice talking to you, man. Thank you so much.